Welcome to the Whole Athlete Podcast, where we focus on discussing topics to help you become a fat burner, optimize health, and improve performance in life and sports. Transform the whole you from the inside out with the holistic method. Let's dive in. Here's your host, Debbie Potts.
Hey everybody, it's Debbie Potts, and I am excited to have Kelsey Hess on my show today. She's the content manager at Kion, Ben Greenfield's company, and she helped organize our Kion coaching program, and she knows a lot. She knows her stuff. So she and I are going to talk about intermittent fasting and is it good or bad for females? So we're going to dive into more women and fasting. But just before she comes on the show today, I want to introduce her. So Kelsey is a certified transformational nutrition coach that specializes in women's health and thyroid disorders. Her first foray into health originated in a decade of researching and experimenting in order to overcome her own hormone imbalances and manage her Hashimoto's thyroiditis. Since then, she's developed her own systems and programs for autoimmunity and women's hormone optimization. More recently, she's working closely with Ben Greenfield, developed a certification course for health practitioners as the one I did with them, Kion Coach, and diving deep into the topics ranging from brain health to gut health, detoxification, hormones, fitness, athletic recovery, spiritual growth, and more. So currently, Kelsey is the content manager at Kion, supplement and lifestyle company co-founded by Ben Greenfield, based in Boulder, Colorado, and she the former engineer. Passion includes breaking down complex scientific topics in the health industry into simple ideas and solutions anyone can understand. So she's a young gal, but super intelligent. And I always pick her brain when I'm looking for information and trying to learn more about a topic. And, she's got all the research and she has all the information she's collected from Ben Greenfield and put it into this Kion program that we did. And it's pretty amazing stuff that's just never ending, so much to learn. So let's bring on Kelsey. I want to talk about intermittent fasting. Should women do it? Is it a certain time of the month of our menstrual cycle, those that are premenopausal, to fast? Talking about different types of fasting, fasting when you are already stressed out, when is low carb too low, keto and fasting. And a lot of my friends are doing carnivore and, doing fasting with that, as well as we can touch into carnivore and hormones for women. So I just really think it's so individual and you have to, experiment, see how you feel, because there's not one size all approach. We don't know how you're going to feel and experience from a fast. That's why I do functional lab testing for clients in my coaching program. And I think that's an important part to really learn more what's going on inside your body before you dive deep into a 3-day fast. Now, intermittent fasting may be a great way to start. I have my clients work towards a nutritional program first for 3 weeks and work on balancing their blood sugar. And once they become fat adapted, then I'll start working into longer fasts. So we might start with a 12-hour fast, and then as they get more fat adapted and feel full longer, get them into doing a 16-hour fast and eat in an 8-hour window. And I just have them do that daily during the week. It's just easier if you're working, I think, to not have to plan and prep all these meals. So it's easier just to have 2 meals a day and drink your liquids and get hydrated and limit your coffee, but have some bone broth during the day as well. So I kind of work on health coaching with nutritional therapy and then taking in account people's results from their functional lab. So really, when I'm coaching people as a FDN practitioner and a nutritional therapist and a Kion coach, is put together all this information into an individualized program. And once we get all those clues from lab results, we can really find out what's going on. So you can start with fasting, but a lot of times we need to do a GI panel, leaky gut, see if there's any other issues going on. Like myself, I know I'm just going to do a GI map test and the oats organic acids test to find out why sometimes I feel better not eating. And that's a big red flag. If you eat and you feel sick, bloated, you have diarrhea or you throw up. So you want to really try out fasting, but just realize it might work for you and it might work for somebody, not work for somebody else, that you have to individualize it and then pick up those red flags if you need additional assessments, additional coaching, and when to see your doctor. So let's see what Kelsey has to say. Hey guys, I have Kelsey on the line today, and I just gave your intro, Kelsey, but if you could kind of share your passion, purpose, and your mission in life as a health practitioner and everything you've learned and what you're doing in life, kind of let's get started on women's health.
Yeah, totally. Oh, how far back do I go? Well, I think I think just like anyone in the health sphere, it started with my own issues that I was dealing with. So I was one of those women that started hormonal birth control at like 17 because of acne. So I was on that for a couple of years, and then that triggered, I think part of it is what triggered my autoimmune disease, Hashimoto's. And so I just went on like a journey myself to figure out what was going on, what was causing a lot of my symptoms. And it was like a decade's worth of just like researching, experimenting, reading books, listening to other experts in the field, and just sort of taking in as much information as I could. And it took a couple years for me to even get diagnosed. Back then, doctors didn't really seem familiar with Hashimoto's or autoimmune disease or what to test when it comes to the thyroid. So, it was a lot of trial and error and experimentation. And through that, I just found out a lot about health and female health. And in my journey to get my health back on track and get my hormones balanced after coming off birth control, that was a journey in itself. So I think I've kind of dealt with a lot of things that women these days deal with: the hormonal imbalances, severe acne, thyroid disorders, hair loss, fatigue, depression, like you name it. I had it all. And so that's like, my career didn't start in health. I have a degree in environmental engineering. And so I was kind of doing that corporate thing for a couple years, and just wasn't passionate about it. Like I just found all my free time was spending researching health. And so I was like, you know what, I'm just going to take the leap and get into this. So I went through a certification program, got my nutrition coaching license, started off on my own, like doing my own business and consulting with women who had thyroid disorders or post-birth control syndrome. And as you probably know, Debbie, running your own business is really difficult. Like I'm pretty open about that. It's hard to do that and to market yourself and to find new clients. And so I did that for, a couple years, loved it, but I was like, I don't think I can do this on my own and this small of a scale too. And so I had the opportunity. I ran into Ben Greenfield at PaleoFX, and I had been listening to him for years at that point. And he was just starting Kion, his supplement and lifestyle company. So this must have been like 3 years ago. And just chatted with him a little bit there, and ended up working for the company and helping Ben develop Kion U, which is the certification course that you went through, Debbie, and that's how we met. And that was an amazing experience. My job was to learn from Ben Greenfield, who is, one of the top experts. Yeah, brilliant. Top experts in health and fitness. I basically just spent an entire year going through all of his content and research and articles and books, and it was amazing. So that was a really awesome experience. And then from there, I started working just with Kion on the content side. So now I am their content manager. I manage the blog posts we put out, emails, articles, social media, and then I still work with Ben a little bit on his podcast. But yeah, that's where I'm at now. And that was my journey in a nutshell. But I think being a part of a team at Kion now is really amazing from where I started, because I can help so many more people now with that platform.
It's definitely, I've been sharing last few months about closing my fitness studio after 12 years. And it's like, someone asked me the other day, Aaron Carson hosted, like, what do you miss? I go, nothing. He said, besides my clients, like, yes, I have a lot of my clients, they still train 15 hours a week, but to get rid of that overhead, the constant stress of owning a small business, after I tried it, and I should have closed 5 years ago, because it just constantly, I think, impacted my health. And that's my main stress, is not racing as much as I, have been able to race since 2013. But my bigger stressor, external stress, was that day to day running your own business. And I always admire people, like, how do you make it work? How do you do it without being totally broken down on the inside? So I think it's a great to talk to other female coaches and leaders in the industry, and how you've evolved into specializing in women's health. And I reached out to you talking about Dr. Stacy Sims' book and Roar, and trying to, combine all of our feedback of what we're learning as coaches. And with Dina Griffin and Erin Carson, she's, a strength coach for a lot of pro athletes, and Dina does the metabolic efficiency. She used to work with Bob Seebehor, and you working with all the Kion people. What are we learning from women's health, and how we need to optimize our fat loss, performance, and longevity? Because what I'm starting to figure out, that none of these tests or research studies were really done on women, because, as Stacy Sims said, they're too complicated, because we have menstrual cycles. So I think we all need to remember it's N=1. We're bio individuals, but women are different than men. As Stacy says, women are not small men. And how did you get into, your own journey, but coaching or specializing in more women's health? And we'll get into fasting for women, because that's our main topic people want to know about.
Yeah. How I got into it, I think, was mostly just being a woman and like being able to relate to women and what they're going through. I'm always skeptical of taking nutrition and health advice from men. And it's not that men don't study women and they don't know what they're talking about, but it's like, it's different if you can totally relate to what a woman is going through and how we change throughout our cycle and how we crave different things and perform differently. And I'm super passionate about just helping women be stronger, healthier, smarter, because I think if we just have a world of like really optimized women who are just like kicking butt, I mean, that would be so awesome to see. And I think I kind of am just going back to Dr. Stacy Sims. A lot of the research hasn't been done on women, so we're making all of these generalized recommendations, and we don't have the science necessarily to back it up. So I think, I would love to see more science on women. I think it is complicated, and I think we are still learning so much about this topic. But I think, like, when it comes down to it, as females, we really have to trust our own intuition and our own body more than anything else. Like whenever I was coaching women, I was like, yourself better than any doctor, any coach. Like, when this is not right for you. Like, you might have mood swings. Your hair might be falling out, acne, you're tired. Like, if something's not working. And so be your own doctor and do your own research and tweak and find things that work for you. And until we have those studies, I mean, we can make assumptions, but we won't have like generalized recommendations for women, and I'm not sure we ever will. And so I think it's really interesting and unique to be able to work with females, because it's like a puzzle, it's like everybody's different, and finding out what works for me versus you is like a really cool little problem to solve.
Exactly. And I just became a certified FDN practitioner, so I can order the functional lab testing. And I'm so excited to start applying, doing these 5 to 6 main functional labs with, everything we do as a Kion coach and nutritional therapy practitioner. And I'm trying to implement DNA fit reports, put it all together. And it's a total health detective investigative process to put it together. And it's a ton of work, but it's fun to me to look through my nutritional therapy book and say, okay, here's all the symptoms they have and what does that mean? And then see this common theme. Because what I say on the show each time is that, you don't know what's going on inside unless you test. It's like your car. Is it looking good and shiny on the outside, but inside is your engine just total chaos? And as Reed Davis says, it's metabolic chaos. He terms it all together, that it's not just one thing. And we don't treat one thing, we treat everything all at once. So because it's, you know, we always talk about this hormone imbalance, it's this whole domino effect of things that happen and go wrong. But that's why I want to get into fasting, because it's beginning of the year. Kion, we did this, you guys had 15,000 people do the Kion fasting challenge.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's a 5-day fast. And part of that, I did a show on it, and I know people did the program that listened to the podcast. What did you learn from that? And it's just the second year. Kind of what are some big takeaways, all the questions people had, and you guys did it for 5 days. 15,000 people is pretty unbelievable around the world.
Yeah. What did we learn from it? A lot. I think we definitely learned that women are interested in this topic and they want more advice on how to fast safely as a female, which is kind of why I did that video. And it was really well received because nobody's really talking about that.
Yeah.
Like they're either, from what I see, the people that are talking about women's health are one way or the other with fasting. It's either like, you should intermittent fast every day to burn fat, become more metabolically efficient, all those things. And then there's like this other camp that's like women should never, ever, ever fast. And it's never safe for a female. And you're just like screwing up your hormones. And so I was like, you know, I think there's a middle ground here, right? Because I mean, personally for me, fasting has been a huge part of my healing journey. And again, not a doctor, but I've dabbled in like so many different kinds of it. And I've seen all of the side effects that women can have from doing it improperly. So I think, you know, the main takeaway is like women are interested in this and they want to know more and they want to be educated about it. So I think next year we're going to do even more information on fasting for women, and maybe like the ebook that we put together is broken out. Mm-hmm. This is your, you know, these are your options if you're fasting as a male. These are your options if you're fasting as a female. So it's not just like fasting for women as a tiny caveat at the end, you know, it's like very broken out and individualized. I think another thing we learned is that people are still a little bit confused about like what breaks a fast, right? And
biggest question. Ben Greenfield had his video questions like, all right, here's all the same 1,000 questions once again.
different ways. Tea, coffee, gum, sparkling water, like all of these things. And I think at Kion, what we try to do is never be prescriptive with our health information. It's never like this is the right way to do it. It's like, well, what are your goals? Where are you at in your health journey? And what's your gender? What's your health status? And then based on that, we help you choose the right approach for you, because, you know, we're not doctors. We don't call ourselves experts in any one thing. It's just like, we're just giving you the tools to make the right decision for you and to take that next step on your health journey. And I think we learned that people they really resonate with that. And, but yeah, it's still a question of like, can I chew gum on my fast? So I think maybe we need to be even clearer about that next year. Like, you know, it just depends. It depends on you and depends on what you're fasting for and how strict you want to be. So yeah, I think those are the two biggest things for sure.
I would say next year, I'd love to, you know, help you in any way, but do a women's only fast week. If we can just do one, and we can, you know, blog each day or do the Instagram videos, because I think we need to teach people that, you know, women are different and not to follow the same rules as men, because I read all these Facebook group pages and read stuff on Instagram just to keep, you know, curious of what people are experiencing and wanting to know what's going on. And everybody has, of course, different responses and no one's the same. And I think, you know, educating the women that if you have a menstrual cycle, everything's going to be a little different what day your cycle starts, and not to compare yourself to what a man did or even another female, because their cycle is different. Or, you know, if you don't have a cycle. And I said in my book, Life is Not a Race, I shared all my chronic stress, breakdown, and burnout, that I thought it was cool not to have my period for whole race season.
Badge of honor.
Yeah. It's like, all right, I don't have to have my period all race season. It was awesome. But then here I am, still screwed up since 2013. I can't race and I never had children. So it might seem like a great thing to not have your menstrual cycle regular, but it's also a huge red flag if you want to be concerned about your rest of your life. And
Totally.
so I think fasting is a great thing because women, everyone's into fasting, intermittent fasting. Read all this stuff from Dr. Jason Fung and all this information. But again, you know, people just want to try it. And what I wanted to ask too is, what is their main thing? They want intermittent fasting, or people trying to do a 3-day fast, or the whole 5-day fast? What did you find was the biggest popularity type of fast?
Yeah, it seemed as though a lot of people were doing this year the caloric liquid fast for 5 days, 3 to 5 days. That seemed like a really popular one.
Do you want to explain what that is, just in case people don't know
Totally.
what that is?
Yeah. So I can go through like each of the different fasts that we talked about in our challenge and our ebook. So the first one was intermittent fasting, which, I mean, time restricted eating, whatever you want to call it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just shortening your feeding window, basically. So we recommended for beginners to do a 12-hour intermittent fast 5 days a week, which doesn't seem like a lot, but if you're really starting out at the beginning, again, meeting people where they are, 12 hours is great. Like, you get a lot of benefits from just fasting overnight 12 hours. And so the intermittent fast was basically, you could do anywhere from 12 to 20 hours a day during the challenge. And the 20 hours is like the OMAD, the 1 meal a day typically. And I can get into why I don't recommend that for most women. But
yeah, if we want to add in as you go, we might as well just put that in for the women, because that was my next question of each type. So might as well add
Totally.
the bullet below each one, bullet list.
Yeah, totally. So, I mean, I wouldn't recommend the 1 meal a day for women very often. I mean, if you're going to do it every once in a while, it might be okay. Like every 1 to 2 weeks, you could do an extended, I would say every 2 weeks is max for most premenopausal women to do like a 20-hour fast. But I wouldn't recommend it daily for women, just because we are so much more sensitive to, I call it calorie restriction, because technically you're probably going to be restricting some calories if you're doing only 1 meal a day. Although calorie restriction is different from fasting, like they shouldn't necessarily always be one and the same. And so the reason, I guess I'll just jump into that right now, but the reason why I put no in quotations, because again, there's like a few mice studies on fasting in women, and then there's I believe there's like 1 or 2 done on postmenopausal or perimenopausal women. There's none done on premenopausal women because of our reproductive cycle, right? Like, it's really hard to make sure every female in that study is on the same day of their cycle, and their cycle is the same exact length.
Yeah,
So
that'd be a hard research study group. Okay, who starts on the 1st of every month? Just like, oh, you can join the study.
Exactly. And our cycles are different every month too. Like mine sometimes is 28 days, sometimes is 27. Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
And so that's a really expensive and really difficult study to do. So that's why we don't really have any conclusive research on that. But we know that when we know that premenopausal women are more sensitive to calorie restriction and calorie shifts. So that could mean, shortening your feeding window, not eating breakfast, whatever. And that's because we see a reduction in kisspeptin, which is basically the signaling molecule for GnRH, which is the precursor to our reproductive hormones. So basically the hormones, estrogen, progesterone, luteinizing hormone, follicle stimulating hormone, like those are all affected by kisspeptin shifting. And so when we're either restricting calories, which is a problem for women for sure, or we are doing some pretty intense shifts in calorie intake, which could mean timing, we see a reduction in that kisspeptin. And that can basically manifest in a number of different ways. I mean, if you're doing it really often, you could, like you mentioned, you could see a loss of your period altogether, or you could just see your menstrual cycle shifting a bit. Maybe it's a little bit later. Maybe you didn't ovulate because you have changed your calorie intake. And so if you're trying to get pregnant, probably fasting is the last thing you want to do. Again, more than like 12 hours, because 12 hours is pretty easy and pretty safe. Because you could just be not ovulating, because your body's kind of like, whoa, I don't know if I'm going to get food in the next couple of hours, so I'm just going to shut down my reproductive hormones. And so just to get into that a little bit more, it kind of makes sense from like an ancestral perspective, right? Like women in times of famine or in times of stress or when times of food was really short, the body can sense that as a stress and like, oh, our environment isn't safe right now. This is not the time we want to get pregnant, right? Like, this is not the time we want to be giving extra nutrients to a growing child or bringing a growing child into the world that we have to take care of. Like, this is a scary time right now. And so it's like it's just a naturally evolved mechanism to keep us from getting pregnant and putting danger to our own self, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I know I did. Well, I started having my issues 2013 after our Superhuman Coach conference. And we were talking about HPA axis, adrenal stuff back then. And I keep telling everyone I was doing metabolic efficiency. I did the treadmill testing myself on people. I was doing all that, but I was doing intermittent fasting without really knowing it, because I went to, I don't know what year I started doing more low carb and fasted workouts back in 2009, I think. But I started 2005, started doing all this stuff way back when, before we knew all this information.
Wow.
And I think a lot of that was too much in my body, because I was doing the low heart rate training. I was racing a lot, but I could go burn a ton of fat at 160 heart rate still. And my crossover point was really high. So I always think, well, when are you fasting too much? And when people are athletes, women athletes, when are we causing our body, like you're saying, that's, oh, I'm under stress. And that was an added stress, thinking I'm not getting enough food because I'm training 20 hours a week and we're stressful lives, that we have to take into account our lifestyle. Like you were saying in the Kion Fasting Week in your video vlog, showing, that's if you have extra stress, and women, that endurance athletes or people doing CrossFit and HIIT training, you have to really pay attention when you're doing a fast, that it shouldn't be all the time. Like I was doing it every day, probably the OMAD, and 2 meals a day, probably back when I was racing. But I think what we're saying is that you have to look at you as an individual, but figure out what fast to do. So when you're doing a scheduled fast, like the Kion 5-day fast, if that's something we should do once a year or once a month, like how we can take that as a female athlete to apply it to how much is too much of fasting, and when is, we need to tweak it based on our cycle. So it gets really complicated. So 12 hours is great to do ongoing, but to do a 3-day liquid fast that maybe you're doing bone broth for 8 hours only, and you're fasting the rest of the time, just water only, and your Kion black coffee. But just like, I think there's just so many factors, as we're saying. I'm not even making any sense right now, but I'm just thinking like,
it is complicated. Yeah.
When to fast and when not to fast. And then when is it good to fast? What type of fast should we do that's not going to cause more stress for our body? Because we want to burn fat. People want to do it to metabolic autophagy, get rid of the dead cells, especially for athletes. And we want to lose fat weight and improve performance and ideally longevity. So
totally. Yeah. And I think, is your audience mostly athletes, Debbie?
Well, I think, it's the whole athlete podcast. I know people that aren't really training for anything, but a lot of people are runners, triathletes, because I try to do what we learn in Kion and, all the different elements. So I call it the holistic method, that trying to teach people all that. But endurance athletes, I think, more so than other sports.
Totally. Yeah. So, just in general, I typically caution against a ton of fasting for athletes, because you need to fuel that activity levels. For me personally, like, I don't consider myself an athlete. Like I used to play college volleyball, but like I'm not, I'm like a NARP now, like a non-athletic regular person,
That's the name. NARP.
Yes.
Non-athletic.
Yes.
Person. All right.
So I do I do normal workouts. I'm pretty active. I rock climb, I snowboard, I do all this stuff, but I wouldn't consider myself an athlete.
That's because you live in Boulder, by the way.
Which is part of the lifestyle.
The definition of athlete is changed because everyone there is like extreme athletes. So
totally.
Sorry,
That's very true. It's all
relative.
Yeah, it relative. Yeah, exactly. But so I think it depends. Like I think it's really important to first, before you even consider fasting, ask yourself why. Why am I fasting? Do I need these benefits? Am I dealing with something that I want to clear up? And or am I just trying to perform better, And so I think it's just, it's important to get clear on your why first before you even start fasting. And that'll help you choose which one is right for you. And so I typically caution against like really extreme athletes doing extended fast. And by extended fast, I mean like what you were doing, maybe 1 to 2 meals a day is kind of a lot if you're doing a heavy volume of training for women specifically. Again, men can totally get away with it, but I think women are just more sensitive. And if you're going for autophagy, if you want those autophagy benefits, maybe you're like getting a little bit older and you're like, longevity is really important to me. I want to just like like you said, clear away the dead cells. Maybe you have some immune system issues, whatnot. You can do less frequent, longer fasts. And so maybe instead of doing the daily 16-hour to 18-hour fast, you just do, like I mentioned, a 24-hour fast every 2 weeks. That on your rest day, right? Like we don't want to stack the stressors on top of each other, which is what I mentioned in that video. A lot of women do because we're super like, more is more, right? Like as a female, like more is more, I can do this better. And so that gets a little bit dangerous, right? We start stacking daily fasting on top of a really heavy training load, on top of maybe calorie restriction already, on top of a keto diet, on top of a stressful work life. And then we have kids, it's just like all of these things that we stack on top of each other. And that's what leads to a lot of the issues that we see with women in fasting. And so just to like loop back to like the female athlete, maybe you do your daily 12 hours. That's pretty easy to do. Make sure if you are exercising of some sort in the morning in a fasted state, you refuel pretty quickly after that. And I know you like the aminos. I love the aminos for fasted workouts. And try to do like the low steady state aerobic exercise in the morning. Don't do your like HIIT burn CrossFit stuff in the morning in a fasted state. That's when we kind of spike the cortisol and see even more hormonal issues with women. Additionally, you can do, like the bi-weekly 20 to 24 hour fast on a Sunday. Maybe you're not doing much. Maybe it's just yoga, hanging out with the kids, walking your dog, hiking, etc. You're going to get a lot of autophagy benefits that way. And then what I personally do is I'll do kind of like what I did for the fasting challenge is I'll do once a quarter or 2 to 3 times a year. I'll do the 3-day caloric liquid fast. Because for me, gut health is really, really important, especially with autoimmune disease. Like my gut is the biggest trigger for me to have flare-ups. And so that's been crucial for my personal healing journey, is doing these 3-day caloric liquid fast, which is usually taking in about 600 calories. I don't really count the calories or like care about them. It's mostly just doing some source of calories in a liquid form so that you're giving your gut some rest and it's not having to break down large amounts of food. And typically it's like a gut healing liquid too. So that could be bone broth. I really love Thorne Metaclear. That's the one I usually do. It's basically like a pre-made big shake mix, but it doesn't have any sugar or crap like that in it. It's just a bunch of vitamins and minerals. And there's some L-glutamine in there, some milk thistle stuff to just help detox and kind of soothe that gut lining. You could also do smoothies if you wanted to. I don't do smoothies because A, it like takes too dang long to make them. and B, it's kind of hard to make a smoothie taste good without using a ton of fruit and sugar, which I typically don't like to do when I'm fasting, just because you don't want to spike that blood glucose at all. So those are really, I would say, just to like sum that up in a way that's like easy to understand. If you're gonna do intermittent fasting as a female, just think about why you're doing it. And just try to figure out if that's going to be right for you. And I would say if you're going to do up to 16 hours, only 2 to 3 days a week. Don't do it every day, and try to do it on your really low volume rest days. And that doesn't have to be skipping breakfast either, right? That could just be eating dinner really early. And then if you've got to do a workout the next morning, that's pretty hard. Maybe you stop eating dinner at 5, and then you eat again before your workout to feel that workout. So you're still getting, 14 to 16 hours in there. You're just stopping eating a lot sooner. And sometimes that's a lot better for some women, because in the morning when they want to go crush that workout, they're not like totally depleted of glycogen, so I like that approach for sure. And then the biweekly 20 to 24 hour fast on your rest day. And then maybe once or 1 to 4 times a year, you could do the 3-a-day caloric liquid fast if you're looking for that extra gut healing.
Yeah. It's funny. I created this 5-day jumpstart challenge in 2016. I just was looking at my PDF manual to give someone, and it's like, oh my gosh, that was 4 years ago. And I didn't realize it was just intuitively to do a detox, to just do bone broth and green drinks, no fruit. And it was 1 meal a day. And I didn't know intermittent fasting, time restricted eating, OMAD. That wasn't out yet. And I was like, oh, that's kind of what I was doing automatically to help people heal their gut and to help the liver congestion, do liver herbal detox tea, and the supplements would help. But it's funny how much we have learned since then, and how women should fast. Maybe look at, I know we're running out of time, I could just talk forever to you, but the fasting days, like based on a woman's cycle. I was just looking at that chart we had on our Kion program with the menstrual phase. When should a woman do fasting? If it's like the beginning of their phase, or towards the end. Dr. Stacy Sims talks about that in her book. So what is the best days of your cycle to put a fast? And then I want to get into, just wrap up with common red flags that you heard. And then we'll have to do a follow-up podcast on thyroid health.
That sounds great. I love that topic too. I love this question. And I love talking about like optimizing your training and your nutrition for your menstrual cycle, because I think it's so interesting and it's so powerful. But so it's kind of like a 2-part answer, I guess. If you're new to fasting and you're really looking for like the easiest way to get through it, you're typically going to have less cravings and be more satiated, less moody, etc. the first half of your cycle. So for me, it'll depend on the woman. I would say like track your cycle first and track your symptoms and how you're feeling before you try to do this. But for me, it's like that. It's almost like right after my period ends up to ovulation is super easy for me to fast. I'm already really cognitively sharp because you have a rise in estrogen and progesterone is lower. And so it just like kind of adds to that. So if I've got, some presentations or like big talks to do, or just big meetings, etc., that's like a great time to do those things. Is like that,
like the follicular phase, days 8 through 13 about.
Yes. So like typically like right after your period ends, or like a couple days after, because sometimes during the period, it just depends on the female. Like some women are really crampy and like kind of tired, and it lasts a little bit longer. For me, that's only really 1 or 2 days where I feel like that. And then after that, I'm like, boom, like ready to hit it hard in the gym, and don't feel super hungry or anything like that. So I would say like the day 8 maybe, or 6 to ovulation is the easiest time to fast. Especially if you're going to do like that 3-day extended fast. And then if I would also say, if you're looking for, I don't typically recommend like fasting as a way to lose weight. It's just not, it doesn't seem to be super sustainable for women in what I've seen. But if you are trying to burn a little bit more fat, you could do it at the second half of your cycle, because you are in more of in a fat burning mode in that part of your cycle. And so it might just like support that fat burning a little bit more, and your metabolism also rises a bit. So you could take advantage of that if you wanted to. But if you're trying to, it's like two different answers. If you're trying to optimize your cycle and really like get your hormones on track, you actually don't want to fast at that time. You want to eat a little bit more. But if you are trying to go for some body comp benefits, like it's going to be harder at that time. You're going to be hungrier. And definitely listen to your body and don't do it if it feels wrong. But you could see more fat loss benefits at that second half of your cycle.
Yeah, because looking at our chart, so metabolism decreases and insulin sensitivity increases the first half of the cycle. And that's our low hormone phase. Mm-hmm. Our peak hormones start right after ovulation phase into luteal phase. So the second half of your cycle is say day 14 to 28. And it's good when we do the Dutch hormone test, a hormone panel, we want to test like day 18 to 21 in that high peak hormone phase to see how your hormones are. Which, side note, I just thinking when you were talking about hormones, it'd be great, like how we test our blood sugar and ketones, if we could just do that easily for our hormones to go, okay, my hormones are here.
Oh yeah. I mean, I know there's like ovulation tests, but that would be super cool to be able to do that.
I just thought of that. A new invention. We got to create Kion blood hormone panel testing. You can do it at home. Here's a urine test.
Hormone. Yeah, totally. I mean, if Dutch is able to do it, like just for that part of your cycle, you'd think that they'd be able to track that every day.
I'll have to ask them. I have their lab kit to do at home. But the luteal phase, that's your high hormone phase. And that's when you are metabolism increases and insulin sensitivity decreases. So you want to eat more low carb, high fat the second half of your cycle versus the first half. You can have a little more carbohydrate. So if we got, another conversation to do, but just talking when women can be really low carb and then when women need a little more carbs, then there's people that say we don't need carbs at all. That's a whole other topic. But
right.
I think it's just finding, the Goldilocks effect for each person, how much of this is, too much, too little, and find the right amount and dial it in is so hard, but you just have to tweak it yourself with your own self-experimentation of when to do your fasting, when to do super low carb or keto carnivore, and when to do your fasting, or even if that's not right. So we've just got a few minutes left. Do you have any red flags that we can share with people that this isn't for you right now, and then we'll do a follow-up podcast on women and thyroid health?
Yeah, totally. I mean, there's like general classes of people that I wouldn't recommend fasting for at all. And that's usually like really lean women. So like less than 18% body fat. It's like kind of a broad like statement, but you typically know if you're lean. If you're like a teenager, definitely you don't need to fast at all. I think we had a few teens asking us about the fasting challenge, and we were just like, you don't need it. Like your autophagy is great. Your cellular health is great. I would say if you're like an extreme athlete, just be careful and pay attention to your body and your performance. And if you've lost that cycle, you don't need to be fasting right now. The thing that you want to do is eat more to get that cycle back. And then if you already have, hypothyroidism or hormone imbalances or HPA axis dysfunction, like fatigue, again, opposite approach. You actually want to eat more. And then obviously women planning for pregnancy or who are pregnant or breastfeeding, like all of those groups, fasting, you can get autophagy other ways. You can exercise like hot and cold. There are other ways that you can do it. Fasting is not the only way to be a healthy human or a healthy woman in general. So I would just say that. And so some warning signs to look out for if you are fasting or have like dabbled in it and noticed some weird things. So obviously a regular menstrual cycle or loss of period, that probably means you're not getting enough calories in, or your body's extremely sensitive to that calorie restriction. If you've either put on weight after doing some intermittent fasting, or you're like, I'm fasting, I'm doing keto, I'm doing a ton of exercise and I can't lose weight, you might actually have some like thyroid dysregulation that we can talk about later. And you probably want to, again, do the opposite of fasting there, which sounds counterintuitive, but women's bodies are very complicated in that way. If you have, decreased athletic performance or like slow recovery in the gym, that could be a sign that maybe you should tailor your fasting, like do a little bit less or do it less frequently. Poor sleep, negative changes to your mood. If you're like bingy and like having strong food cravings, that's definitely a sign that your body's sort of getting into that mode where it's on that fine line of being in too low of calorie restriction. Acne or dry skin, that's kind of a sign of some thyroid dysfunction. So if you've started fasting and you have breakouts all the time, like that could be a sign that you don't want to be fasting right now. If you're losing hair, that was like a big one for me when I had hypothyroidism, is I just lost so much hair. It was crazy. And so I see, I actually see a lot of women dealing with that. And that could be a sign that, maybe you're too low carb or you're too calorie restricted, or your thyroid is just down regulated for some reason.
I was just going to throw in, that's why I thought the other day to create a coaching program, just a one-time fee to do the lab assessments for someone, because so many people, their listeners and followers of Ben and do our Kion, follow everything from Kion, that they already do all the biohack and the lifestyle stuff, and they're fasting, cold thermogenesis, but they don't know if they're doing if it's working or is it causing more stress. We're talking about all these women fasting and doing all this lifestyle changes already, but I just really think we all need to do these lab tests, because you don't know if you're causing more harm than good, or if you're really changing what you're trying to change. How do you know without doing the, looking under the hood and getting those internal stressors dialed in specifically to you? So I think it's important to just like, all right, I'm going to do these 5-6 labs, spend it's like say $1,200-$1,500 and a bunch of labs, but you get this information and know, am I helping my health and working on fat loss everyone wants, but really got to look at longevity and what Ben's talking about. We'll talk next time about his new book, but it's just so important to really know what's going on inside you as an individual.
For sure. And I think what you just said, like just doing one coaching session where you help people understand their labs, is a really powerful, it's a powerful thing you can do, because if you're someone that's like pretty self-motivated, like I don't need a whole coaching program, but I have no idea how to read these things or like what even to test for. I think that's a great, and especially with the thyroid, Debbie, like nobody tests the thyroid, right? Like it's only functional medicine doctors that even know what they're doing. So if you, I'm sure, and FDN is an awesome program. So that would be a really cool model to have for sure.
So did you finish all your red flags? I interrupted you with my thought, but
the last one was just irregular heartbeats. Like that's a pretty clear sign that you should probably stop fasting.
I did have someone do fasting last November, and we're doing her lab testing this week. So I'm glad she's looking into it more so, because she didn't respond as other people did. Cause I had 10 women do this 30-day program with me, and everyone responded differently when we started doing a little more intermittent fasting. And she had heart palpitations and had anxiety, and she's like had to add more calories and add more carbohydrates, and other people thrived. So I think, you got to work on how to feel alive and thrive and improve your vitality. And it's not going to be the same for everybody. You have to remember that.
Totally. Yeah. That's a really great point.
So Kion, we can go to getkion.com, and of course, wonderful content that you put together. And there's always great blogs that if you haven't signed up for their email blog report, that's always action, information packed resource. And then anything else coming up this year for you and your world?
I think, I'm just working with Kion, making sure we put out awesome content every week. So follow us on Instagram. It's @Kion, and look out. We've got some cool product launches coming this year. So I'm sure you'll be in the know with that, Debbie. But we've just got a ton of awesome stuff that we're working on, and just trying to help people, get a little bit healthier every day, meet them where they're at, and provide them with really, really clean and pure supplements and functional foods.
Meet them where they're at. That's what I tell my clients all the time. And everyone needs to remember, especially if you have a coach or a personal trainer, meet their client where they're at today. So it's an important thing to take away. And are you Kion going to Expo West Natural Product Show? I just signed up for my blogger press pass.
I don't know if we're going this year. We've kind of taken a different approach with those events. If we go, we probably won't have a booth. We'll probably just go to hang out and see other people. So I'll let you know. I'm not sure if we are.
I'm there because my husband goes for work. So I've went the last 2 years and I walk around Friday and Saturday.
So
but there's the hot new products exhibit. That's only the Thursday and Friday. So I have to make sure I go first thing there Friday morning when I get there. But it's in Anaheim and you have to go to Disneyland, of course.
Totally. Yeah, that Expo West is like Disneyland for me.
It's insane. Yeah. I know. You have to bring an extra suitcase to take home all of your samples.
I learned that last year.
Yeah, there's hoarders there that just at the end of the show, they just like clear off every table. It's embarrassing. So anyways, I will let you get back to your day and your work. So thank you. We'll definitely have you back on the show talking about women's health and thyroid. I think that's a huge topic for women, female athletes. And we'll put everything in the show notes, guys. And I hope, I put the YouTube channel video of your Kion fasting in there? Because that will tell you guys a lot more. It's a half an hour long. And so I'll put the link to the YouTube about women in fasting and more information on fasting. You might have to wait till next year to sign up for the free ebook that we got, but let's talk about that women's versus men's fast. I'm interested in that for sure. Next January, 2021. All right.
Thanks for listening to the Whole Athlete Podcast. If you have any questions, feedback, or topic suggestions, let us know on Facebook or at wholeathletepodcast.com. You can help us continue and grow by leaving a review on iTunes. Thanks again, and see you next time.